Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discuss the Detroit Lions' 24-6 win over the Indianapolis Colts. That makes it 9 straight wins, first back-to-back 10-win seasons in team history. We're going to talk about what went well, the injury issues, and a look at the updated take on the NFC North again. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hey, this is Rob Rubik, former Detroit Lion. Hey, you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast. That drops every Monday. James, good to have you here. Welcome back from Indianapolis.
Happy Victory Monday.
That it is, and joining us to celebrate is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's also the current Scouting and Training Director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here too.
Short week, love it.
Yes, it is a very short week. Before we get to the upcoming game, the big Thanksgiving Day game, we're going to recap. We're going to talk about what happened with the Indianapolis Colts. Starting with that, we're going to hear from Coach Dan Campbell.
You know, I would highlight our defense first. I mean, there again, this is, whatever it is, 10 quarters without allowing a touchdown. 3 last games in the second half, we're not allowing it. So, man, we are, we talk about all the time, limiting points, play physical style, shut down the run. We were able to do that. We knew Jonathan Taylor was going to be the guy we needed to shut down. We did that. They quarterback runs, they got us on a couple, but for overall, we did what we needed to do, and we kept them out of that game. Offense, so much of it was really the way it went down early in the game. We were able to kind of get that lead. 2 of those drives went down and scored touchdowns, which was big, and then just kind of kept them at arm's length to where they couldn't quite get to us.
Okay, guys, give me your overall reaction in a sentence or two. James, let's start with you. What did you see?
I saw a good workmanlike win. Nothing fancy, but they went in on the road, won a game that they should have. And I was surprised when I saw the Detroit Free Press headline that said no excuse for Lions' lackluster performance on offense against awful Colts. I was like, that seems almost as bad of a take as calling Jared Goff a civilian. We can expound on this a lot more, but the Lions are the only team to beat the Colts by 3 scores this season. They've played a lot of close games, and they were only 1 game out of the AFC wild card coming into that game. So it's not like they were that much of a pushover. They weren't the Jaguars.
Well said. All right. Yeah, let's get into some of those headlines. But before that, Coach, what's your overall reaction? Sentence or two.
Yeah, I saw that one too, James. I'm glad you pointed it out. I think they lost 1 game 20-10, and everything was in 1 score, correct? So whatever. People got to try to stir things up, and we're going too good. But anyways, my reaction, no matter what happens, injuries, missed blocks, missed passes, missed assignments, bad calls, this team continues to play above it all. Clean it up and nobody can beat us.
There you go, Coach. My take is 10 wins in a season back-to-back. First time in team history. A solid performance by the team, especially considering the injuries. So I guess let's start on that first topic. You guys both brought it up, which is the headline of a lackluster performance against an awful Colts team. James, you think that's exactly what it is just someone's trying to create a headline? We see it on social media where people, it seems, intentionally say something, even if we don't even know if they always believe it, but they say it because they know it's going to get a reaction. And you've got a lot of experience in this industry. Is that what you think's going on, or you think it's something different?
I think it's a bit of trying to get some attention and some clicks. But I think it's also a bit of maybe somebody trying to be at both sidesism. and trying to pretend like they're not Lions homers by trying to find something to be critical of a team that's 10-1.
Fair enough. That makes sense. And coach, I mean, 24-6, you'll take a win like that any day of the week, right?
It's tough to win football games, and you're playing in the NFL, and you're playing against the elite of the elite. And to win a game 24-6 or win it 7-6, that's a dub. It's moving on. I mean, and again, I think people are trying to stir things up, but yeah, I was like, man, we only scored that many points, but we controlled the clock. We gave up 6 and we won the game. And we finished the game on how it should have been finished. One-sided score.
Yeah. And I appreciate that sentiment, James, of someone trying to look at both sides of the coin or whatever and be like, hey, we're not just taking everything and just saying the Lions are perfect. But here's my point is Dan Campbell's not saying the Lions are perfect. They're admitting that there's things they need to clean up. And they're coming out and telling the public this. So because of that, that makes me think, hey, you know what? I'm okay with what's going on. And I think it is okay that, the Lions are putting it out there. So I'm not saying we shouldn't put it out or we don't have to, but it's not a priority. Now, if the Lions were coming out and saying, we're good, look at our record, nobody can beat us, well, then maybe I think more criticism's warranted. But
Mhm.
when I find Coach Campbell criticizing things that I think are an issue, well, that makes me kind of comfortable in a way with this team. Would you think so, James?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the Lions are by any means reading their own headlines and feeling really, really good about themselves. I mean, obviously they feel good that they're 10-1, but I don't see this team as somebody who's taking, just assuming, oh, nobody can beat us.
There you go. All right. Well, we will get to some criticism because there are some things that we didn't love in this last game, even though we won 24-6. But let's start by talking about what we liked. We celebrate this thing. James, you got a couple things you wanted to put in there.
Um, yeah, I mean, well, this is the Lions' longest streak of not allowing a second half point since the 1980 season, which I think was the another one bites the dust season when they started out 4-0 and then started using that as their theme song and then kind of tailspin out of control there and ended up missing the playoffs. But and I saw somebody actually suggest doing that again, of using that song
Oh,
again. They didn't know the history of it, and people were like, "No, no, 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 let's not do that." But I mean, the Lions did what they normally do. Montgomery scored a touchdown. Gibbs scored 2 touchdowns. They controlled the ground game. They controlled the trenches. The Lions, the only NFL tandem of running backs to run for 10 plus touchdowns through the first 10 games of a season in NFL history is Montgomery and Gibbs this year, and then Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor in 1960 for the Packers. I believe both of whom are in the Hall of Fame.
wow. And that was a very different game back then. I don't know my history perfectly, but I would guess more touchdowns were scored on the ground back then as
Yeah.
opposed to in the air, which would help carry over to that. And I believe there were probably 12 or 14 games in a season, probably 12 games in a season back then. So,
Shopify is a global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business and sell more with less effort thanks to the Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/redcircle, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redcircle now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/redcircle.
When you visit Arizona, time is measured in moments, not minutes. Like the moment your work stress disappears as you kayak through the canyons. Or the moment you discover the life-changing effects of prickly pear chocolate. But nothing beats the moment you see the Grand Canyon for the very first time. Visit a new state of mind. Learn more at hereyouareaz.com.
all right. Well, coach, I want to give a shout out to the defense, man. The second half shutout again by the defense. I know you want to brag about this defense, coach.
What is that? 3 games in a row, no second half points. 10 quarters, no TDs, right?
Yeah.
Now what are they? Second in the NFL in scoring defense. Second in the NFL in scoring defense.
Wow.
First and third down holding teams under 30%. of complete a third down, under 30%. Indy 98 yards, in the second half. And I think the three teams, Indy and let's see, I think Houston's involved in that, and somebody else from that division have not scored a point in the second half against the Lions. Hey, might start out bad, but it's how you finish.
Yeah, and part of what goes into that is one of you guys already mentioned this was the time of possession in this game. I mean, 37 minutes to 23, especially in the second half. And anytime you do that, that gives a big advantage to your defense because they're fresher, especially if things become critical in the second half. You're playing with the high ground as opposed to the low ground, if you will, in a battle there. And so that's a good thing to see right there because that also tells you you're controlling things. Even if you're not scoring points, you're not going 3 and out all the time. So, Coach, speaking of the offense, not going 3 and out, the receiving core was pretty balanced in this one. I know you liked what you saw there.
Oh my God. I mean, Saint 4 for 62, JMO 5 for 64, and TP 4 for 57. Tim Patrick had that brought back what? I think I was right on the JMO one. Saint one. I think it was 4, but anyways, the Tim Patrick one, that reminded me of a guy we lost from last year, right, Josh? I mean,
Yeah.
losing Josh last year, that just all of a sudden the big receiver makes a clutch first down. I think the one reception was 27 yards, if I'm not mistaken. And every one of those catches, and again, he's always blocking, but every one of those catches, he is just jacked. He is fired up. He's saying, let's go. Man, does he fit in well. And just another great check down guy to us. So if we're still talking about receiving on the bad part, I still can't figure out what's going on with Laporta and those connections, but hopefully they'll get that figured out. And this will be a good week to do that on.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that on the things we didn't like, or maybe the things we're confused about. But sticking with the receiving, I mean, I know, James brought up that civilian, that pedestrian thing, but Jared Goff threw for 269 yards, 26 of 36. He had a rating of a 93, 0 interceptions. He didn't have a touchdown, but he had 0 interceptions, and we just pounded the ball in on the ground because we could. And so that's a clean game. And that pass to Tim Patrick you're talking about, Coach, on the run, that was awesome because that was such a great play because he was scrambling and he found a way to pick up even more yards versus worrying about getting that over for James Cook on the rushing average in the game. So great move by Goff and great play by Patrick. So, James, you're pretty good with what you're seeing out of Goff, or would you want to comment on the offense?
Oh yeah. Well, I was just going to go back to the receivers. I mean, who had David Montgomery getting 4 times as many receiving yards as Jahmyr Gibbs on his bingo card? Montgomery pitched in with 3 catches for 36 yards, so that's a nice little addition to the receiving core too. And we had a Brock Wright sighting.
We did, yeah. And David Montgomery did not rush nearly as much as Gibbs did in this game. He had 37 yards to 90. He did have that injury, so he didn't play the whole game. But he did contribute with the receiving part. And I know as the year has gone on, their numbers have kind of separated a little bit in these last few weeks for a variety of reasons. Sometimes there's just not enough field for David Montgomery to run on. And then obviously the injury here, and we'll talk about that and where that went to. But it's nice to see him being part of the passing game because it's not just to see him get involved because we know he can be, but it's just what it does for the other team's defense and what they have to do because it opens things up for JMO and St. Brown. All right, guys, I caught the first quarter, a little bit of the second. I caught the entire fourth quarter. I missed a lot of it in between because, I'm traveling as well. And I know that Kindle Vildor started for Arnold, and then he was part of the defensive group there, and the defense did a great job, but I saw a lot of headlines online that Vildor's reviews were not the most favorable, that Dorsey played a bit too. Coach, I want to start with you. What did you see out of this?
Well, he definitely is not that man-to-man guy that we're looking for. And he works on technique so much that, he's not going to hold and tug and pull like Arnold does. And people complain about that, but then you don't give up big pass plays. The best coverage he had was the long pass down the sidelines where there was a completion because the ball was thrown perfect. I mean, it was inches that he away from tipping it. He had a couple other ones where they attacked him, and he pushed them out. Got him out of bounds so that they couldn't make the throw. He rode him the out of bounds. They picked on him, man. They threw at him a ton of times. Which why wouldn't you? He's their second stringer. So he didn't. Did he give up any huge touchdown plays? Did he give up any of those? Yeah, I mean, those are things. But he still came in and did a pretty decent job. PFF graded him 28%. They were reading the headlines. I probably would have graded him 50%. But again, I don't. He just they picked on him a ton. Whether it was a bigger receiver, whether it's a smaller receiver, quick receiver down the sidelines, and we won a football game. And I think, did they score a touchdown? I can't remember. I think is that right again?
No touchdown in this one, Coach. Nothing at all. I mean, and that's where you kind of wonder about the criticism. I mean, it's a young receiving core, it's a young quarterback, and I think people are worried about when we're playing Jalen Hurts and the Eagles crew, or maybe we see a guy like Lamar Jackson. So those could be some things that they're thinking about, which is warranted. James,
Sure.
you saw more of this game than I did. You were there. What were you seeing out of Vildor?
Yeah, he got torched a couple of times early. I mean, not so bad that it was for a touchdown, obviously. For some first downs and some decent gains. It kind of reminded me of Dan Skipper's start a week or two ago, where it was pretty rough at the beginning of the game for him, but then he got his feet under him and started playing better in the second half. And I think there's the same thing for Vildor. In the second half, he was definitely not getting just burned as much as the first half. So that PFF grade seems a little low, but I don't know. I don't know how to judge these PFF grades. I look at them and you try to say, okay, well that guy should be good. If they have a high PFF grade, that's usually legit. If they have a low one, sometimes that can be pretty off. But in the first half was not great for him. The second half was notably better, I think.
Okay. And, I think something I'm going to say I did like about the defense overall was, even though we didn't have sacks or turnovers, the red zone defense was key in the first half. Like Coach said, 0 touchdowns in the game, 0 points in the second half, but holding them, and this is kind of a pivotal moment or whatever, if you want, when we get to that, is 2 field goals. So that way we're up 14-6 instead of 14-14 at one point. And so the defensive red zone on our team is solid. And Zadarius Smith did get a couple hits, quarterback hits. And I read DJ Reader did the same, plus a TFL. Coach, other good things you saw out of the defense, maybe the front four or even the linebacking crew?
I mean, Pascal's just setting the edge unbelievably, keeping that pocket in there, not getting hooked on the end. I think that's huge. Levi had a good game. Rodrigo freaking all over the field. I think he got a game ball.
Yeah.
Again, guys stepping up for each other. And again, we didn't have any sacks, which is kind of bothersome, but the pressures are there. McNeil is a one ball wrecking machine. I mean, wait till Zadarius Smith understands the whole defense concept and we can use them more. I thought Trevor did a good job on the edge. We keep doing things up front, and I think it's going to come into play this week. We'll talk about that on the pregame, but preview about guys staying in their lanes. We had a couple bad fits. Sub the line, D lineman here. Wingo had a freaking block, knocked the ball down. So that stuff, the defense with the D line is just unbelievable. And I'll tell you another play I want to pull out, that one that Campbell laid out and knocked the ball down when we had 2 safeties about to pick that ball. That dude Campbell's, man, he played an awesome game. I mean, just a totally awesome game. And the other guys filled in admirably. And the big thing is guys on the back end or on the front end or in the middle make up for any mistakes we make in certain areas. And that's just great team football.
That it is. And, anytime the opposing team's quarterback is their leading rusher in a game, it's usually not a good stat. Now, Anthony Richardson did run 10 times for 61 yards at 6.1 average, but that shows how well they kept Jonathan Taylor in check. 3.2 yards per carry on 11 carries. They only ran him 11 times because it just wasn't that effective. And James, I mean, you got to just continue to be encouraged on how well I'm going to call it the regular run defense. I know the quarterback running those yards add into it. It was still 96 yards, but our rush defense, our traditional rush defense, forces teams continues to be a little bit more one dimensional.
Yeah, completely. They clog the middle. They take the run game away, and they also I think the pass rush was good enough. It didn't get home like we said. There's no sacks. There was a good number of pressures, and that pass rush also kept Taylor in the backfield as a blocker the whole game. They weren't leaking him out for passes very much, and that's something that he is pretty decent at. Catching those short screens and being a safety valve there, and they had to keep him in to help because of that pass rush. The pressures they had, Zadarius Smith had 5, Ali McNeil had 4, Pascal and Reeder had 2 each, and then Nowaski, Campbell, and Levi each had 1. So, I mean, that's a pretty decent number of pressures um, that Anthony Richardson was facing. I mean, and considering that he only threw the ball 28 times.
Yeah, and great observation on James Taylor there being kept in to block more because that takes him out of what he is best at, which is driving defenses crazy when he's got the ball in his hand. And so if you've got him in there helping to do that, that does mean they are getting some pressure, even if not everything's being recorded on the stat sheet. And so, yeah, great observations, guys. Let's oh, James, you got something else before we go to turning points?
And they used they used a lot of their base 12 offense with 2 tight ends in too. And that was to I think blunt some of that pass rush ability from the outside too. So they were really kind of focusing on not letting Anthony Richardson get sacked. Which is a pretty good strategy because he takes enough hits already because he runs so much. So if he takes a few sacks on top of that, I mean, this quarterback's going to break down. So you've got to protect your young quarterback. So I mean, that was a good thing. And then they didn't use Amik Robertson very much because of that, because they weren't, and then the Lions didn't have to play a nickel because of the 2 tight ends nearly as much. So.
All right. Turning points, pivotal moments. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but holding the Colts to field goals in the first half, a 14-6 lead, a 21-6 lead at the half is better than a 21-14 lead. Coach, how crucial is that going into halftime like that? And then what was another pivotal moment you had in this game?
Well, there's a couple of that's critical. I think, one of them is the, Goff missed Laporta down the sidelines, got in the second level, got into that mid-range out route. He missed him on that, which I think it turned into a 3rd and 8, and we run for first down. So that's
Yeah.
a pivotal moment. We run for first down and up scoring a touchdown on that. So I think that was one of the biggest ones. And I think another one going in the second half, Goff gets sacked, strip sack, fumble, and we jump on the ball. Okay, we recover our own fumble. Huge point. If they get that ball there and maybe go in and score, this might be a different football game. So, we had some luck in that game, and again, we don't want to see those things, but those are huge points in the instance to where we can do it. And I think one of the negative pivotal moments, which I'm going to bring up, is we got to quit getting those 15-yard celebration penalties, because that's going to cost us. I know we got a kicker that can kick from 95 yards, but let's not make him do that to win a football game with an extra point.
Yeah, going back to that first one you brought up, which is recovering our own fumble. A play like that can be a total game changer. It can be a 14-point swing in some situations, and so that is huge. And yeah, those 15-yard penalties can be killer. Fortunately, it has not hurt us yet, but like you're saying, you got to clean that stuff up so that it doesn't hurt us later, because it will at some point do that. James, what do you got here for turning points, pivotal moments in the game?
Yeah, I think early on, one of those field goals that they prevented the Colts from getting in the end zone early on was when they had 3rd down pretty far in Lions territory, and Zadarius Smith was all over Anthony Richardson to force them to kick one of those field goals. And so that was one of those plays. I think if they score a touchdown there, maybe the momentum is different, and maybe this is a whole different game. But I think holding them to a field goal there was pretty big for the Lions.
Yeah, and I think that was a 4th and 1 play that had happened, or it was going to be 4th and 1 at one point, and Dan Campbell accepted the 5-yard penalty for illegal lineman downfield. So then that brought up 3rd and 6, and they forced him to throw it away on that 3rd and 6 play, I believe, and that forced that field goal. So I want to give some credit to Dan Campbell for saying, you know what, we're not going to give them the 4th and 1 chance and see if they quarterback sneak it up the middle or what they do. We're going to make them 3rd and 6. We're going to bet that they pick up less than 5 yards on this play and hold them to a field goal attempt, which is exactly what happened. I know James has another thing he wants to bring up, but before we get to that, Coach, what were your thoughts on that play by Dan Campbell?
Oh, I think it's huge. I watched the game last night with Philadelphia, afterwards, and the Rams lined up to stay on the field, and they changed it and said we'll take the penalty. And tournament, it was the exact same thing, except Dan Campbell is ahead of the game where the Philadelphia coach is not. Not we're not going to bring that up. I'm sorry. Anyways, and so I think it's a great play. I think you can't, you got a 245-pound tight end or whatever he is, 250, 235, you read. And yeah, 4th and 1 is a pretty easy pickup. Let's make them go to, and then, AG turned the dogs loose, and like James said, he was all over him. And it's tough to throw the ball when you got somebody at your feet or hanging on your hip. So great play. Again, the Lions being in a situation that they do in practice all the time, and jumped on it immediately and made them go to 3rd and 6.
Yeah, and you only accept a penalty like that when you believe in your red zone defense or your defense in that situation. And it shows that the Lions do just that. Because there's been times in the past where you would just hope the other team would kick the field goal or whatnot, or maybe do what the Eagles did. This other pivotal moment, I gotta believe James Cook may have been personally part of this pivotal moment. James?
Yeah, I'll go into a bunch more detail on this later, but I mean the crowd there was incredibly vocal. It was almost a Detroit home game. Um, Even the Colts coach had to address questions about it after the game. The players from the Colts had to answer questions about it from reporters about how many more Lions fans there were at this game than Colts fans. So I mean, and the Colts got called for a lot more penalties. I don't know. They didn't get called really for false starts or anything like that, but it was amazing how many more Lions fans there were there than Colts fans.
Nothing like taking a home field advantage on the road. All right. Well, let's switch over to things we didn't like or things we were concerned about. James, let's start with you. Or no, Coach, let's start with you on this. What are some things you didn't like in this one?
Well, I think the injuries, of course, we're going to talk about that because they keep stacking up on us, but we just keep answering the bell. Again, I'm going to bring up the 15-yard celebration penalty is kind of a concerning. I love the celebration. It's kind of weak. I thought on kind of backpedaling in and telling a guy, why are you even trying to catch me on the edge? I'm the fastest guy in the NFL. But we just don't want to. We just don't want to. Those add to you, and they're going to come back and bite you. It's called karma. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And there was a 4th and 1 play that was concerning when after we got stopped, the offensive line where there was a couple guys getting into it with each other. And again, that's the coaching part, yelling at why did the blocking scheme was messed up. And again, that's stuff that Dan Campbell will clear up. But 4th and 1, we never expect us to get stopped in a 4th and 1 against nobody. And for that, it could have been another huge turning point in that situation, but the defense was playing so well. Down the road, it may come back to bite us. But other than that, it's the Lions winning a football game as a team.
All right. Yeah, I second most of those emotions there. Something I didn't like is I think Goff got sacked 3 times and he got hit in the game a bit and he was pressured about 17 times. And so, I'd like to see all those numbers a little bit lower and just keep Goff as healthy as possible because the injury bug does seem to be going around. So that would be my concern is just giving him more time giving him the opportunity to stay upright. Now, one of them, he early in the game, he kind of turned and he lost his footing, so that might have been him slipping, but he was under a little bit of pressure at that point.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
James, let's talk about injuries here. And Coach, you're going to weigh in on this as well. And some weird stuff happened actually during the game. But injuries, David Montgomery, Taylor Decker, right? Decker went out, then came back in, and then went back out, is my understanding. David Montgomery left the game with a shoulder injury, could have come back in, is what we're being told. And I think the Lions were looking at the long game for this one. Carlton Davis got banged up, and Khalif Raymond is the one that seems to be the most serious. So let's first talk about the left tackle play. Something strange happened here. Coach, you want to take that?
Well, James and I see James talking about it. I'm watching. Of course, you guys can hear, but I'm watching. They going, Glasgow goes in at left tackle, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And then, and I'm thinking, and then the next play, he's back at guard. And so, I kind of made a note of it during the game going, that's pretty weird. And then, of course, I was reading up on it and go ahead, James, you can explain the rule.
Yeah, I was the same way. I was watching the game, and when Decker left, and I was like, "Is that Glasgow at left tackle?" I'm like, "That's 60 at tackle, right?" And I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe that's 70, and maybe I'm just reading this number wrong because I'm in the 400 level, or something. And then the next play, he was back over at guard where he's supposed to be, and I was like, hey, that is Graham Glasgow, and yeah, it turns out it's an obscure rule where when you report as eligible, you can't come back. You can't be in the next play at an eligible spot without the team having called a timeout or some other kind of break in the action, like the 2-minute warning or a change of possession or, the quarter ends or something like that. So the Lions would have had to burn a timeout to put Skipper in at left tackle for that one snap. So they just moved Glasgow over. They put Nice in at guard in place of Glasgow and played that one play, and then took Nice back out and put Glasgow back at guard and Skipper back in at tackle. But it was a weird little thing and one of those weird little obscure rules that are always interesting to learn about in the NFL.
Yeah, well, great job, both of you dissecting it and understanding it. And now I wonder, back last year that Dallas Cowboy game when Decker reported eligible and we had to do the play over again. What was Skipper playing left tackle again at that point, or what was happening? I don't even know. But it makes me wonder about that because there are so many depths to the rule book here in the NFL that even a somewhat advanced fan doesn't know all of them, and you're always looking stuff up. So good job, both of you guys, on that.
And thankfully, Dan Campbell knew the rule, or somebody on the sideline, because they were all over it. Like apparently, somebody told Graham Glasgow, "You have to go play left tackle for a play," and he was like, "What?" He didn't know the rule.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate it because I sometimes feel like our coaches know the rules better than the officials. I mean, I'm just kind of pointing out from previous experience of watching these things happen. All right, but let's look at these injuries because that's a major storyline. James, you almost forewarned us about the loss of Isaiah Williams on this, and if Khalif Raymond's out for a long period of time, that's going to affect our return game.
Yeah, I mean, Williams would be nice to have as a depth piece. They've got other guys who can do that. I mean, in the game they put Amon-Ra St. Brown out there, which was kind of risky, I think. But they've got Baki can do returns. Khalil Dorsey's done kick returns. I haven't seen him do punt returns very much, but maybe that's going to be an option for them. So they have some options there. Or they could maybe just bring somebody back. They could maybe sign like a Jamal Agnew who's sitting on the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad. Somebody that they know a bit and has good return skills. But Yeah, that one was that seems to be the most serious of the injuries that and could be something that where he misses multiple weeks, maybe even an IR stint. But I'm not sure about that. They'll do testing today and everything. Same thing with Carlton Davis, although his doesn't look nearly as serious because he did interviews after the game. Like if it was serious, he would already be in the medical room getting some stuff done. So. So I don't think that's serious with Davis, but we can talk a little bit more about some of those injuries when we look ahead to the Bears game too.
For sure. For sure. And coach, I think I heard you on the other side of the Atlantic when Amon-Ra St. Brown was in there returning punts. You didn't like that one bit.
I love it. Fair catch. I mean,
There you go.
we would just fair catch. If I had to do that in a situation, I'd put one of my guys with the best hands and say, just fair catch it. And St. Brown's not going to freaking do that. You know, he's going to try to get as many yards as he possibly can. And I did see him grab his knee a little bit on the last one. And then during the timeout, he's on the sidelines and he was kind of flexing it and playing with it. So, of course, I got a little nervous, but he still continued through the game. But yeah, as soon as I saw him back there, I was like, fair catch, fair catch, fair catch, please fair catch, just fair catch it. All we do is need the ball. And when he returned that one and that dude was flying down, I'm like, oh no. And
Yeah.
hopefully it worked itself out. We'll figure that out on the pregame.
For sure. And James brings up a great point. There are some other guys like Dorsey or Vaki who could step into that role. We've got some guys. That's the great thing about this roster is just the incredible depth we have. Because every team is banged up and has people missing. I think the Raiders are down to their third quarterback right now. And so, the fact that we have so much quality depth helps us overcome the injuries as best as one can. Rakestraw got put on the IR. Arnold was out in this game. I think we realized just how darn good this rookie Arnold is. I mean, people were giving Terry Arnold a hard time the first month of the season. It quieted down and then it started coming back again. But, James, we're seeing right there just in this most recent game, a different attack by the other team's offense with Arnold not in the game.
Yeah, you totally notice the difference in the coverage there with Arnold being out. And then Davis was there most of the game, but missed a chunk of the second half. So I mean, at times you had Vildor and Dorsey at corner. So you notice the difference between those guys. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, they get Mosley a little bit more into the game plan next week. He played in this game, but only on special teams. Didn't get a single defensive snap. I kept looking for four out there, and he was nowhere but on special teams. So that kind of tells me that they're easing him in, getting him some game action on special team reps, and then maybe he'll be able to do a full go for the Bears.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they do, right, Coach? They ease these guys in, but how exciting is it that Mosley is a guy who's working his way back in, considering Rakestraw's got the injury, Arnold was out, Carlton Davis is battling with a through the thumb injury. I mean, just knowing you have extra options coming back that are quality.
Yeah. Well, think about that. Easing him in and he got in and didn't hurt anything once he was in. He's had
Right.
the terrible luck over the last few years. Here's the other thing too. How many people question us re-signing him last year? Uh, and for what? And then he gets hurt, then he gets his pecker. But the point is, you got to have that depth, and that's a guy that if he comes out on the field and starts for us, if we did have injuries, we're not gonna worry about it because that he's played a lot of football and he's watched a lot of football in the last few years, and his skill level is pretty high. So it's good to see that, and it's good to see that we can go three deep and hopefully have enough guys to play that corner position.
Yeah, and again, when you've got a guy who's battled through injuries, who's not coming in to be a starter necessarily, or he's a little bit further down that depth chart as like the number 3 or 4 starter, that gives you a little bit more comfortableness and a little bit less stress on how things are going to go. And if there is a loss of playing time, you can absorb it a lot better. And so I'm looking to see what he can bring to this defense, especially at a time where other people are a little banged up. All right, James. Atmosphere in Indy. You talked about the crowd. Was it about 50-50? Is that what you were saying? Or what would you Give us everything.
I think that it was well more than 50-50 Lions fans. When I was walking around before the game on on the concourse, it was at least 2-1 Lions fans. It seemed to be in that stadium. And walking around the concourse seemed to be more than that. Sitting down, it was a little bit less, but I still think it was more than 50-50 that were Lions
Wow.
fans there. I mean, the section that I was at, there was two Colts fans sitting to my right, and then like two right in front of me, and then pretty much everything else I could see was Lions fans. And the section I was in only had 10 rows, and we were in the 10th row. But there wasn't a whole lot of Lions fans in there. I mean, it was like a home game for the Lions. More reasons than just the number of people there that were Lions fans. I mean, the Colts have Meyer sponsoring things there. So that's the
Oh,
same sport field. They also have a Simba cam like the Lions do
what?
uh, during the timeouts. Yeah, I was like I wrote down in my notes. I was like, what the heck is this? I thought this was only a Lions thing, but apparently maybe it's not. And then they also
But
had this
but but wait,
graphic that
wait, James, aren't the Colts aren't lions? Isn't that from the Lion King?
yeah, that's what I was like. What the heck is going on with this? But apparently it's more of a commonplace thing at sporting events, and that they don't have to have the Lions tie in, I guess, because they had one during one of the timeouts. And then one of the
Okay,
graphics that plays during the game a lot on the part that goes kind of around the graphic that wraps around in the inside of the stadium is like this horsepower thing. I mean, I get it, they're the Colts, so it goes in with
sure.
them. But horsepower is also a Detroit thing, and they had like pistons going up and down. I'm like, that seems like a lot like Detroit, and everything like that. So they like this is like home. It but it's a nice stadium. It's a nice stadium. The concessions are cheaper than Ford Field. I'll say that. I got French fries with honey sriracha sauce for $4.25.
Nice.
That's pretty good. And the Colts actually, like if you go to games like in Lambeau or Soldier Field or whatever, on the video board, they're not going to replay positive plays for the other team.
Right.
The Colts don't have that policy. They'll replay big plays by the Lions, which I thought it was unusual. You don't see that too much at opposing stadiums. They pretty much will only replay their own friendly good plays, and the rest of the time it's just going to be a graphic on the board, and they're going to pretend it didn't happen.
Wow.
But
That's you took a lot of great notes, and I think you still got some more.
yeah. Remember when there was almost a safety when we thought that the Lions had a safety on
Mhm.
Richardson? When they ruled that that wasn't a safety, the boo in that place was so loud. Um, and when the Lions
Nice.
got like one of their first penalties of the game, aside from the taunting, I think it was in the like late third quarter, the Colts fans gave this huge jeer for the Lions getting their first penalty in a long time. So that was fun. And then as soon as Bates hit that field goal, Colts fans were gone. They were streaming for the exits.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jared Goff did say the fan experience on the road is amazing after this game. He said the fans showed up to affect the game and change the game. And he said that's something he'll never take for granted. And, I mean, it was a perfect game to be able to travel on the road for a lot of people in Michigan,
Mhm.
especially because it's harder and harder to get a game to Ford Field.
I, I ran into a guy from Cadillac that I knew at a McDonald's on the way to Indianapolis.
My, my cousin
Like a
was there. I
McDonald's,
mean,
and I can't even remember what little town it was. We pulled over to get some gas and and there's a McDonald's connected to it, and there's this guy from Cadillac that I know.
yeah, like I said, my cousin from over in Grand Rapids went. I mean, a lot of people. I'm sure we all know lots of people that went. I mean, obviously you went,
Mhm.
but you went with friends, but you ran into people as well. And so awesome. Well, anything else?
The atmosphere after the game was just the the bars were packed with the bars, the restaurants, everything was just packed with Lions fans everywhere. And the one of the places that we went to that was kind of walking distance from the stadium was a place called Kilroy's, and it's kind of a sports bar. And some Lions fans took over the jukebox, so it was like all Eminem, and they actually were able to request and get on there, with the I can't remember the name of the app that you use for for jukeboxes, but I have it on my phone too. They actually played the Detroit Lions fight song at least twice in this bar. The
Wow.
Forward Down the Field song.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Gridiron Heroes, right?
yeah. And then they played Lose Yourself, and the whole everybody in Detroit stuff was just going crazy.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's take a look at the speaking of records, jukebox. See what I'm doing right there. Let's look at the NFC North records of everybody. I mean, we spin those things round and round. The Bears just couldn't help the Lions, and they couldn't beat Minnesota, and the 49ers couldn't beat the Packers. So the NFC North is 10-1 for the Lions, 9-2 for the Vikings. I guess that's 8-3 for the Packers and 4-7 for the Bears. The Bears have 5 straight losses, yet they are still positive point differential. That is not easy to do, to be 4-7, have a positive point differential. Coach, what are you seeing out of the division another week later?
It's just, I mean, exactly what we talked about. And it's, Green Bay pulls out, and, our Vikings pull out the victory against the Bears. Bears are showing you that they can play with anybody. We got them coming to town, and it's Thanksgiving, and we've lost 7 in a row. I don't want to even talk about it because my turkey never tastes the same. And so I think that's something we gotta worry about. We're gonna beat up on each other for the next couple, for the rest of the season. But they continue to take care of business outside of our division, and that's a big thing. And if let's talk about the Bears again. Block punt. Okay, they had another block field goal, right? They had another block this week too. So that's and a Hail Mary, and all of a sudden that record's a lot different. And great defense, black and blue, and some pretty good offenses. So we definitely got our hands full, but the division is sticking out, showing out that it is probably the best division in the NFL.
Yeah. The Vikings and the Packers are just not going to go away. And, I'm going to say the Vikings wins have not been impressive necessarily, but they're still 9-2. And I bet you if you told a Vikings fan at the beginning of the season they'd be 9-2, they would figure they'd be leading the division at this point. And if you said the Lions would be 10-1, not knowing the Vikings, you think the Lions have a 2 or a 3 game lead on the division at this point. But I think it's going to come down to the games we play against our division. We've talked about that before. And, I know it's 1 week at a time, but these next 2 games, Chicago and Green Bay, are going to be against divisional foes. If we win each of those games, we are in a really good spot. The Vikings, they're going to play the Cardinals and the Falcons before they play a bunch of divisional games as well. And so, would I like to have more of a cushion at this point? Yeah. But we don't just want to win the division. We want to win the NFC. And that, the Eagles keep winning. So they've won 7 in a row. Lions have won 9 in a row. We're just going to have to keep winning if we want this. Is that what you're seeing, James?
Oh yeah, for sure. The I don't think the Eagles are going to go away either. They look so impressive in that Sunday night game against the Rams. Saquon Barkley was out of control. 255, I think, in that game. That was
Crazy.
great. Yeah. So I don't think that they're going to go anywhere. The Lions have to keep winning to stay a game ahead of them. So and the NFC North is the first division since the realignment in 2002 that where 3 teams have 8 or more wins after 12 weeks.
It's the first division. Wow. That's yeah.
Yeah.
So living up to all expectations and preseason hype. So, yeah. And I know Philly's got some tough games coming up, but you know what? They're winning their tough games right now too. And they looked really good against the Rams. So, all right, guys. Well, it's about time to get out of here. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Coach?
Nope, just looking forward to that victory on Thanksgiving and see how many pounds I can gain from eating too much food.
All right. Well, we want weight scale numbers. So we want a pre-eat weigh-in and a post weigh-in, just so we're being honest here. Okay, Coach?
Oh, we do that every year. Its problem is I can't beat my son anymore.
James, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to that turkey tasting a little bit better after the Lions haven't won on Thanksgiving for 7 years in a row.
Here on that one. Let's get a turducken out there. Thanksgiving is big. We need to get off the schneid. We'll be talking about that in our preview episode. Look for that tomorrow. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like, comment on socials. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.